Good morning and welcome to City Club Missoula's June Forum, Planes, Cranes, and Automobiles, Major Infrastructure Projects in Missoula, and I have to admit, one of my favorite subjects. My name is Brett Rosenberg, and I have the privilege of serving as the chair of the City Club Board of Directors, and I'm delighted to see so many of you coming on with us to visit with us virtually today. City Club's mission is to bring people together to inform and inspire them on issues vital to the community through public forums that encourage the discussion of new ideas and the free exchange of thought. We have a deep commitment to civility and civil discourse, even when we discuss very controversial issues at times. Before I introduce our moderator, there are some thank yous in order. As always, thanks so much to the University of Montana and Alex Karklins in particular for making these virtual meetings and forums possible. Also, thank you to Missoula Community Access Television, which records our forums as part of their media assistance grants to nonprofit organizations. MCAT serves our community on cable channels 189 and 190. You can also find past videos of CCM forums by clicking the video button on our website, cityclubmissoula.com. Thanks to our sponsors, particularly those at the executive level. In addition to the university, they are Blackfoot Communications and First Security Bank. We also like to highlight some other sponsors every month. So today we want to recognize First Interstate Bank and Morrison Merrily. We'd also like to welcome a new sponsor, UA Local 459 Plumbers and Pipe Fitters. We're grateful to our very diverse set of sponsors, and we invite you to join them by going to our website, cityclubmissoula.com. And of course, thanks to our board of directors and our administrator, Eric Legbold. City Club Missoula would also like to acknowledge that we are on the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people, some of whom are present with us today for our forum. Today, we honor the path that they have always shown us in caring for this place for the generations to come. Today's panel will be moderated by Melissa Matassa-Stone. Melissa is a principal engineer and co-CEO at WGM Group with more than 18 years of experience in the civil and environmental engineering fields. She heads WGM Group's environmental division and is a certified floodplain manager and lead accredited professional. Melissa is a proud Ramblin' Wreck from Georgia Tech, where she earned her BS degree in civil engineering and holds a Master's of Project Engineering and Management from Montana Tech. She serves on the board of directors of Climate Smart Missoula and United Way of Missoula County, where she just completed her second term as president. Originally from Florida, Melissa has called Missoula home since 2005. Outside of work, she enjoys all things outdoors, especially running, kayaking, and skiing, and spending time with her husband and children. And in between all of this, she has time to moderate a panel for City Club Missoula, and we are grateful for that. Melissa will introduce our panel, and I will see you at the break, roughly 12:15, once the panelists have finished their presentations, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. Over to you, Melissa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brett, and thanks for the introduction. As a longtime civil engineer, talking about infrastructure is one of my favorite things to do. So I am honored to introduce the three knowledgeable panelists we have today. First up will be Brian Ellestad. He's the current acting airport director and has been with the Missoula County Airport Authority since 2010 as the deputy director. Brian has over 30 years experience in the aviation industry, earning his undergrad degree from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse in business administration. Prior to joining the Missoula staff, Brian was deputy director of marketing and communications at Lexington, Kentucky's Bluegrass Airport. Next up, we'll have Shane Stack, the public works director for Missoula County. After graduating from Montana State with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, Shane spent 23 years working for the Montana Department of Transportation, with the majority of that time working as the Missoula District pre-construction engineer. During that time, he collaborated with others to plan and construct projects like Highway 93 South between Lolo and Hamilton, Highway 93 on the Flathead Reservation, and projects in Missoula, including Russell Street, the Madison Street Bridge, the Orange Street Interchange, Van Buren Street Interchange, and the Higgins Avenue Bridge. Finally, we'll hear from Bob Vosen. He's been with the Montana Department of Transportation for over 25 years and is currently the Missoula District Administrator. He currently splits his time between the MDT Missoula and Kalispell offices. A fifth-generation Montanan from Kremlin, Bob is a graduate of MSU, same as Shane, and lives in the Flathead Valley with his wife of 25 years and their two children. So Brian, you'll be starting us off today. Before you share your PowerPoint though, I know that most people think of an airport as a starting point to go on vacation, see their family and friends, or as a launching point for a business trip. Today, we're looking at the airport in terms of infrastructure. So would you share how you define airport infrastructure?
You know, for us and kind of throughout my career, I mean, it's always been about customer service. So I look at infrastructure for us just to have a better customer service experience, ease in, ease out of the airport, and anything we can do to make somebody's trip easier. That's really what I see as infrastructure for us.
Thanks, Brian. And I flew out of Missoula just a couple weeks ago, and the improvements there have been amazing. It was a great customer experience. Do you want to launch in with your PowerPoint?
Sure. Let's give it a shot here. Did that come across?
Looks good on my end.
Awesome. So, well, thank you for inviting us and kind of sharing where we are at the terminal expansion. You know, this started back in 2013, and we're finally seeing infrastructure in the ground, and we hoping to open up the first phase in less than a year. Come on. Here we go. So our terminal was built back in 1948, so it was very, very much an aging infrastructure. As the engineers like to say, we had 11 major renovations. We may have started off with some blocks, but then we added tinker toys, we added some Lincoln logs, an erector set. It just was impossible to add any pathway for IT. So it was just time to kind of freshen things up for a bit. And we've grown. I mean, since 20 years ago, we've almost doubled in size. And really a lot of that growth has been within the last 10 years. You know, 4 new airlines, 10 new routes, and much bigger aircraft. I mean, our hold rooms were for 19 or 38 seat aircraft. And when you have 196 in a hold room, as you guys know, it's tight. Our site, we have Highway 10 to the north. We have our ramp to the south. We have Minuteman east and west. So we're kind of we were tight on where we could build. So we had to make everything fit without moving it to a completely different green site. We did look and see if we could do a fixer-upper. It worked. Our terminal is probably the right size, but the size is all in the wrong places. Small hold rooms, but spacious lobby at the time. And there was just no room for expansion. So we just kind of decided it was time to bite the bullet and do it right. So that's kind of where we are now. This is an overlay of the first phase of how it would lay over the current building. As you can see, we knocked down the first TSA checkpoint, and then eventually we'll knock down the entire terminal. First phase was to kind of make a green space. So we knocked down the TSA checkpoint, and that's where the building that you see today is, where we moved the checkpoint to the middle of the terminal. And then we're under final design for the next phase, and for illustration purposes, you know, we would keep kind of the rental cars and baggage claim in a different area, but that's where we would build. And then it's just room to grow is really, we can add blocks onto any end versus a fixer upper. We were stuck. That was just nothing more we could do. So, you know, for the people that follow us, we wanted to make sure it was easily expandable. Here you can, here we go. One more. So one thing we took care of while we had lack of customers is we started growing the parking lot. So if there is a good thing about COVID, we were able to phase this in a way that we could just do one big project. So we've been slowly growing our parking lot, and where we have 300 parking spots. Melissa, is this still coming across okay?
Yep, it sure is.
Okay, so we grow through 300 parking spots. So for customer service convenience, we're relocating the exit plaza. So right now, for almost 1,200 parking spots, we would just have a single exit with 2 booths. It just isn't enough. So we're expanding that this fall. We'll go from 2 booths to 4 exits. So last thing you want to do is when you come to the airport is get off an airplane and wait to depart. So we're trying to make that easier for our customers as well, and straighten out the line. So we have parking is all cross directional. So we're trying to make nice straight lines, easy to find your car upon your arrival. And then for infrastructure, here's kind of the building as it kind of came out of the ground. You can see the loading dock I'll talk about later off to the lower part of your screen. That's for all supplies that we'll bring into the building. But the building just kind of grew and grew. And this is kind of what you see today if you were to drive by. The siding's going on, most of the glass is in. So we're starting to see there's studs on the inside. So it's starting to take shape. Just starting from the basement going up, long hallway. Going too fast here. Whoa. My mouse is a little tricky here. So in the basement, we have geothermal for heating, for cooling. So that's one of their infrastructure things that's going on. You can see here the electrical room with all the cable trays. So, this is just something we didn't have before. Much easier to bring IT throughout the building. And there's our IT room. That's where all the airlines and all the infrastructure for our backbone of our building will be. This is the long hallway in the basement where all of our deliveries will come in to a screened area. We want to get our delivery trucks off the front curb so that it's much easier for our customers to pick up their loved ones upon arrival. And then this is the airline room where all the airlines will pick up your checked luggage. So you can see here at the top of the screen is where all the ticket counters are. You'll drop your bag off behind the ticket counter, so you won't have to check your bag, go find a TSA, correct checkpoint. You'll drop your bag and then it'll be all screened behind the house. And then the airlines will pick up your bag in a separate room, which will be delivered to the aircraft. And here's some inside shots. This is where all the ticket counters will be. You can kind of see there what it'll look like once all the drywall is in and the escalator is operational. Second level, that's the TSA checkpoint, future TSA checkpoint. This is where the TSA checkpoint on the right and where the meeters and greeters will meet their loved ones coming in or business associate. And this is a stairway to an observational deck, which I'll kind of go on here shortly. And there is a kind of a view of where the meter greeter area is, and then an observation deck, which we're pretty proud of that we'll talk about later. Again, TSA checkpoint, what it'll look like with drywall. Everything's going pretty quick. This is all departing passengers. This is the view that they'll see as they walk off the airplane and go down to baggage claim. And again, so this is our concession area in the secure area. So as you see, we partnered with local brands, so the Kettle House Tap Grill, and another view of it in a different angle where you'll actually order. This is our popular outside deck. We made sure we incorporated that in this new design as well. And there'll be a fireplace in the corner, and through those plastic there where there's now windows, since I've taken this picture, the bar is right next to it. So you can go out and have a nice beer and wait for your flight. This is our third level admin area. And again, so just some more pictures. This is the observation deck. So right now, one of the issues we have is people can't see airplanes arriving. There's no place to look at the airfield pre-security. So this will have a fireplace. We'll pipe in the tower frequency so you can hear planes land. And for aviation geeks, we'll have a Jeppesen chart so you can watch the flight paths of aircraft. There's some soft seatings up there. An elevator, escalator, I should say. Again, some more pictures. One of the things for customer convenience, we were all about the views. So we're installing electrochromatic glass. So we have no blinds in the new terminal. Everything will be self-tinting. So if you want to sit next to a window, it'll reduce glare, it'll reduce heat. And the big thing is no shades or blinds. So this is a nice addition that we felt was a very customer service orientated. Again, just some more indoor pictures, mock-ups. And honestly, the wood paneling is going in as we speak right now. This is a view down the concourse. family rooms, which we don't have today. This is a pre-security mock-up of what's pretty close to what's going in for the meter and greeting area. Obviously, again, a local brand. And the Cold Smoke Tavern. So that'll be attached to our outdoor deck. And then Black Roasting Coffee Company will be the coffee provider in the concourse. And then we're upgrading a lot of our IT, the FIDS, the GIDS, the gate, which is the gate information display system. And kind of one of the big customer service things is people obviously hate to wait for a gate. There might be open gates here at the airport. This will give us the flexibility that any airline can use any gate within the airport. So if Chicago's delayed on a Delta, there's no reason Delta then can't go over to a different gate that's open. Just plug in probably basically / Delta. They'll get into a common use system and they can process passengers via this computer system. So this will allow us flexibility. It also gives us air service advantages for new entrants who would do seasonal. They don't have to bring in their own computer system. So it'll be a pretty big air service tool that we'll have in our toolbox, and it'll just make it much more flexible and easier for us go. And this is kind of what it'll look like when we do the open up the first phase with the old terminal. And then when it's all said and done, kind of a daytime view and a nighttime view of the fully done terminal. And that is it for me, Melissa. And I'll save time for questions at the end.
Thank you, Brian, for the virtual tour of the airport expansion. As someone with young kids, I know that the observation deck is going to be our favorite place. I really have a greater appreciation now for all the hard work you and your team have done to keep service going while preparing for the future. Moving on to you, Shane. I know you have a PowerPoint to share as well. Before you jump in though, most of your career was spent with the Department of Transportation, which really is focused on roads. As you've transitioned to Missoula County Public Works, the range of infrastructure you address has grown much wider. What have you found most interesting or surprising as you've moved to the county?
So I don't know if it's interesting or surprising. I guess I'd maybe mention a couple things. First, I think I'm really happy with working with the commissioners and the staff and the leadership at the county. All wonderful people, really all focused on trying to do the best job they can for the public and the members of the county. So that has been really just awesome to be able to work in an environment that they're really focused on customer service. So, but I think the big change for me going from state to county, I was really focused on project delivery on the pre-construction side. And as the public works director, I'm also focused now on maintenance, construction, and sewer and water systems, building department. And I'll get into a little bit of that as I talk about what public works really does. But I really went from a very hyper-focused position to a very broad position. So I think that was probably the biggest change.
Thanks, Shane. I think I saw your shoulders get broader as you talked about that expansion of responsibility. Take it away.
All right. Let's see here. Let me know if you can see that all right.
Yep, we've got it.
Perfect. Thank you. Maybe. There we go. All right. So just kind of the things I wanted to touch on, just to cover a little bit about what Public Works does, the different programs and divisions we have, and then just some key projects and events that we're working on or things that have happened recently. So we have multiple divisions at Public Works: survey, building, sewer, water, we have the refuse district and MS4 program and road and bridge. So talk a little bit about the surveyor's office first. We've got 3 staff members that work in our surveyor department, 2 surveyors and 1 technician. And they provide a long list of services, and I've got those listed there. I'm not going to get into detail on every one of those things, but I think the biggest thing I get out of Public Works is out of the surveyor's office at Public Works is I can go over there, I can say, all right, where's the right of way on this roadway? And or what's the COS look like for this property, and they're able to provide that information relatively quick, and they've been super helpful trying to get us all the information we need, and they provide that same service for the public as well. So they do a great job. They are funded through the general fund, and their budget's right around $325,000. Next, I want to talk about our building division. So they've got a team of 11 staff members. We've got a building official. We're just in the process of hiring a new building official. The gentleman that has just retired was the original building official that started the building program here years ago. So sad to see him go, but working on getting another gentleman to take over at this point. We do have a plans examiner that reviews all the plans, and then we've got a permitting staff and an inspection staff that goes out there and makes sure what is built meets code. And why is it important for our infrastructure to meet code? Well, when you buy a home, we want to make sure that the electronics are going to work in that, or the heating system, the cooling system, or the structure itself that's going to handle the snow load. So in Missoula County, when you buy a home, you can be assured that it was built when this building program was around, that it meets code. Just give you I guess an idea of the number of permits that we're dealing with. I've got a couple of 6-month periods out there. First one is July through December of 2019, and that was right before the pandemic hit. And then the one above that is July through December of 2020. And that was in the middle of the pandemic. And what's interesting is if you look at the number of permits, whether it's building, electrical, mechanical, or plumbing, those numbers jump significantly during the pandemic. And so while we were in a pandemic, our staff was working overtime to try to get these permits out, get the inspections done. So they did a wonderful job and continue to do a great job working through the pandemic. So they are funded, that program is funded entirely through the permitting. So whenever you come in and get a permit, there's a fee for each one of these permits, and that's how the program's funded. Budget's right around $1 million, just a tick under. The next program is our RSIDs, and those are the Rural Special Improvement Districts. And those are primarily focused right now on our sewer and water systems. And we have 4 systems that we work with. But we have a staff of 7 individuals. We've got a superintendent, an RSID operator, and then we've got 2 full-time operators and then 3 part-time operators. And those 3 part-time operators are, it's some hours on the weekends or when the other operators can't be there. So the systems that we operate and maintain in Lolo, we've got sewer and water system, and there's 1,115 residential connections and 30 commercial connections. So it's a pretty decent sized system. In Elmar, we've got a water system, and it serves right around 500 residential connections. And they used to have sewer and water, but once the city pushed the sewer out along Mullen Road, then Elmar jumped onto the sewer system, and we've shut down that sewer system out at Elmar. If you don't know where Elmar is, you head west on Mullen Road, right across from the golf course is where you will find Elmar. I've got Lewis and Clark is a small system out in the Clinton area, 42 residential connections, and they have sewer and water. And we just did a big upgrade on their sewer system this last year. Sunset West is a water system, just about 40 residential connections there, and that's kind of in the Y area. And a lot of the houses up on the hill on Fred Lane are served by this water system. The water systems and sewer systems through the RSAD are essentially funded through the members of that district. So on their property tax bills, they'll see a fee that they pay annually for the services. So that's how it's funded. Budget sizes, we're right around $1 million in Lolo, 200,000 in Elmar, 26,000 in Lewis and Clark, and then our Sunset West systems right at 31,000. We have a refuse district, so we also manage garbage. And I've never done that before either, so that was a new one. So in the Sealy area, unlike Missoula, we don't have a garbage system where you can't really just go to the dump. So instead of the folks in Sealy Swan having to come down to Missoula to dump, or going maybe into the Flathead to dump, what we've done is we provided a location for the folks in the Swan Valley to bring their garbage. And we contract with Public Services. They operate the facility there. People bring their garbage. It's compacted, loaded into trucks, and it's trucked to Missoula and disposed of at the disposal site here. Got around 1,900 properties assessed. We do have the opportunity for customers just to drop in. If you're not in the district, you can still come on in. You just have to pay a fee to drop off your garbage, and they're open 3 days a week. And they're funded through the RSID and drop-in customers. And their budget's a little over $400,000. So we have an interesting, I guess, program here. It's the MS, we call it the MS4, but it's a municipal separate storm sewer system. And essentially EPA delegated the responsibility for DEQ to implement permits in the urban area to basically manage stormwater runoff. And so what that means is Missoula County and the city of Missoula operated under an MS4 permit. And the county is essentially responsible to kind of monitor the water quality, monitor runoff, things like that, to make sure that the water that's running into our streams and lakes and rivers is clean. So that is funded through the general fund, and it's right around $40,000. We just have one part-time staff member, and that part-time staff member does other things. We do bridge inspection, levee inspections with that person too. Last, road and bridge. We've got right around 40 staff members for that. We've got a Sealy crew and a Missoula crew. We've got 5 up on our Sealy crew, and we've got mechanics and operators. Operate and maintain 252 miles of paved road, 200 miles of gravel road, 60 large bridge structures, and then 366 smaller structures. We also assist our parks, trails, open lands folks with maintaining 50 miles of shared use paths. So one of the interesting things is we also are responsible for maintenance of all the bridges in the city of Missoula. So Missoula will take care of the roads. They'll plow the bridge, but we're ultimately, as the county, responsible for the bridge structure itself. We're funded through, a mixed bag. So property taxes, if you look on your property taxes, there's a road and bridge piece in there. So that goes to us for roads and bridges. We also have gas tax. Some of the state gas tax, we around close to $700,000 in gas tax from the state through BARSA and just regular state gas tax. We've got entitlement share from the state, and then Forest Reserve Act. And that Forest Reserve Act, it varies. It's some years it's 60,000, some years it's 300,000. So our budgets for road this year, it's right around 5.9 million. But that included some of the funding from this year that rolled over. We have some equipment purchases that'll go into next year. So actually our budget's probably closer to 5.6 million on a normal year. And then bridge, it's 1.9 this year, but South Avenue Bridge is included in that, and that's just the engineering components of the South Avenue Bridge. If you really looked at our actual bridge budget, it's closer to 1.1 million. All right, so that gives you kind of an overview of what we do at Public Works. I just want to talk about kind of a few key projects and events. So first thing up is ARPA, American Recovery Plan Act. So we are going to receive right around 23 million at the county, and there's multiple uses we can use that funding for. Part of those are sewer, water, storm drain, fiber, and those are kind of going to be the projects that I'll probably be working on. There's also some additional funding. So the minimum allocation grant funding, there's going to be 2.8 million that's dedicated to the county, but we have to apply for that funding, and it requires a 1-to-1 match. And then at the state level, there's going to be 177 million available just for competitive grants. So right now we're trying to evaluate how we're going to use those dollars, what we're going to apply for, what projects we want to deliver. Kind of another, I guess, big change that happened this last year. This time a year ago in June, the county passed a local option fuel tax. And that was, it lasted till the legislative session started, and they eliminated the local option fuel tax through legislation. So it was interesting. 4 or 5 years ago, the state and locals were asking the legislature for more funding for transportation. They said, hey, you've got this local option fuel tax. You should go see if you could pass that. Missoula County promptly passed that. And and then the legislature cut that. So that was a 10% reduction in our budget for roads and bridges. It's a loss of $550,000 annually to the county, but an additional $550,000 to the city as well. So a bit of a loss. Trying to figure out strategies on how to generate revenue a different way now. Key project that we're working on is Mullen Build. If you weren't aware, the city and county applied for $23 million worth of build funds to construct roads, and sewer, water, storm systems, and sidewalks and trails out in the Mullen Build area. Which is in between the airport and Reserve Street and Mullin and Broadway. So there's a big swath of land out there that's undeveloped. It's got a solid plan for how to develop that. So right now we have right around $19.3 million to build infrastructure out there, working with a contractor through a CMGC process. The latest numbers they had at our 100% design, they were right around 22.8 million, and we've only got 19.3. So at our 95% numbers, we were close to that 19.3. I was confident we were going to stay on schedule. But as of right now, those numbers are significantly higher than we can afford. So at this point, we're going to delay construction to 2022. But I think we'll be able to build all of it in that 2022 construction season. Federal Lands Access Program. These are 3 projects that the county has submitted applications for Federal Lands Access Program funds for. And what FLAP funding simply is that Western Federal Lands has funding available for cities and counties where they've got facilities that lead to federal lands. So living in Missoula County, there's plenty of federal lands out there that our county roads lead to. So we have lots of eligibility there. So we've applied for 3 different projects. One was 9 Mile Road, which is 11 miles of road rehabilitation. So improve that gravel road from kind of the 6 Mile area, Conifer Drive, where it goes from pavement to gravel all the way to Kennedy Creek Road. So that is a pretty sizable project. We were asking for $4.5 million in flat funds, and our local match was going to be around $700,000. Construction would be anywhere from 2 to 3 years if we are selected. You got to remember there's $48 million, I think, in available funding through this program, and a lot of counties and cities in the state that will be applying. So there's no guarantees we're going to get this funding. We've just applied for it. Next project was Sawmill Gulch. And if you're familiar with the Rattlesnake and the Rattlesnake Trailhead, if you turn off Rattlesnake Drive and you head towards there's a short segment of roadway that leads you to the main trailhead. Well, that's Sawmill Gulch Road. And that first quarter mile, we would just look at widening it, adding some on-street parking, and then the remaining 1 mile just past the intersection with Rush and Joe Road, we would widen that from a 14-foot top to a 20-foot top and create a cul-de-sac at the end where we can get trucks turned around and we can start doing winter maintenance. And I've got a visual for you on that. You can see the trailhead down here. This red line really is the depiction of Sawmill Gulch Road. Rush and Joe kind of veers off here. That's the paved segment. And from that junction, it turns into a dirt road. So the short segment at the top there where we will add some parking. So we worked with the Forest Service on these projects and prioritized all the potential projects that were available, and these were the top 3. So Cold Creek Road is the last project. It's about a half-mile long road and bridge project. It's $8.3 million ask of the FLAP program and $1.3 million local match, and it would replace a structure that's a little old, outdated, and limited. And really talking to the Forest Service, they look at that structure as a high priority simply because if that bridge goes away, their reaction time to forest fires and maintenance and things like that becomes quite a bit longer, and they would prefer to keep that structure in place. So, and then the last project I wanted to talk about was a Transportation Alternative Program project. And if you're familiar with that program, it's a federal aid program that's run through MDT, and This year, they had right around $6 million worth of funding available for projects like sidewalks and trails. Well, the Lolo School in Missoula County and Lolo School have been working together on this, I guess, now for a couple of years. But the Lolo School passed a bond. They are going to construct a new school on Farm Lane. So there are no complete sidewalks on Farm Lane or Lewis and Clark, which is this stretch through here. So to familiarize you, on the left side of the screen, that's Highway 93. Down here, that's Town Pump. That's right next to Highway 93. So what we would do would be to construct sidewalks and curb and gutter from Highway 93 all the way to the school. And that sidewalk would connect up to the trail that was built by the county through a grant, a Tiger grant several years ago. So no guarantees on that. There were, gosh, I think 40 some applications, $24 million worth of applications for $5 to $6 million. So we're hopeful that we submitted a competitive application, but we will find out soon. So that's $850,000 in transportation alternatives and $133,000 local match. Here's my contact information. I guess we'll do questions after Bob.
Thanks, Shane. Seeing the breadth of work that Missoula County Public Works does really brings it home how important the work you do is to Missoula County residents and how hard you work to leverage our tax dollars in seeking competitive grants. So good luck as you hear back from those. Next up, we've got you, Bob. Before you move into your presentation, we've seen many high-profile Department of Transportation projects constructed in and around Missoula in the last few years, like the Russell Street improvements, Bonner Bridge, and those you'll talk about today. It seems that the public engagement component of these type of projects has become more pronounced before and during construction than they used to be. What do you see as the role of public involvement in Department of Transportation projects?
Yeah, you know, it's over the course of my career, we've definitely taken a lot more proactive and a lot more purposeful process of involving the public. And there's two components to our public involvement that we're really focusing on. One is early on in project development, we're really reaching out to the public. Kind of our catchphrase is we're listening and we do care, and we're trying to get with the public early on and make sure that we have a good understanding of all of the nuances to the project besides the basic travel and the basic automobile component to the projects and how they play with the neighborhood and how critical they are to so many different facets of people's lives. So we're really trying to make sure that we are involving people early on, make sure that we do have that clear understanding of all the impacts and things that maybe are outside of a traditional highway project, if you will, and recognizing particularly in the urban areas that that we're affecting many more facets than just the highway itself. And then once we get through our design phase and we've come to the direction the project's going to go, what the final plans look like. As we get into construction, we recognize the impacts to the traveling public and to all the users of the system. So then we've got a really robust component of doing the public outreach and just sharing what people can expect, making sure they understand that if they need to have additional time for their travel or if they need to plan on maybe alternate routes or just what those impacts look like. And also at that phase, we're still seeking feedback, but what we're looking there is what can we do? Did we miss something? Is there something we can do to help people? Is the signage not clear? It's just things of that nature. So we've really taken a much larger chunk of our time recognizing the tremendous impacts we can have to the public at all phases, all the way from early on as we're coming up with a project concept leading through design, construction, and on into maintenance.
Thanks, Bob. Knowing how your projects wrap into the fabric of our community, I really appreciate that outreach. take it away.
All right, I'll see if I can get this screen to share here. Did that come through for you, Melissa?
Yep, looks great.
All right, so now if I can make sure that I can get the PowerPoint to change pages when I want it to. There we go. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was just the footprint of MDT in the greater Missoula area. So on this slide, you can see, you know, everybody thinks of the Department of Transportation, the interstate and Highway 93, but there are routes within the urban boundaries and that people may not recognize are actual still part of the NH, the National Highway System, or the secondary system. And then some of the urban routes there, as you can see in this slide, you know, the Higgins headed south. These are all routes that are on the MDT state maintained routes. So it is a greater impact, or that this shows how much impact we can have on the community with these projects. And one of the things that's been really interesting for me, I've been in this role as the administrator for 2 years now. Prior to that, I was the construction engineer. So Shane and I had a lot of years working together. He was the pre-construction engineer. I was a construction engineer. We both moved on to broader scope of duties, if you will. And one thing that for me is being involved all the way from that initial concept of a project that Shane used to have, all the way through maintenance and how we're going to continue to take care of these roadways. And so we do have a very good partnership with the city of Missoula and with the county. As you can see in these images, just some of the roads that we have that we're in charge of are not only in city and county, or not only in the city, but with the county. We also share those projects, and we need to make sure that we're coordinating closely together, meeting the needs of everyone. So the next slide I've got here is the upcoming MDT projects in the Missoula area, upcoming and current. So we've got the first one here is the Reserve Street Concrete Rehab project, which is generally wrapped up at this point. We still have striping and some final cleanup work on that project. The other project that is very, just a tremendous project, very exciting, and that's this Higgins Avenue Bridge project, where we've completed essentially one half of the project. Vehicles and pedestrians are able to use the new bridge right now. The wider shared use, multi-use path on the west side is, that's an exciting change and improvement for the users down in the downtown Missoula area. Just a great project. We're really happy to have going along. Another project in this area is the next phases of Russell Street, completing the southern part, and then we also still have to finalize the intersection with Broadway. Another challenging project in the highly urban area. We're in the design process right now, but looking forward to bringing that project forward soon. A recently identified project that you see here is the Orange Street Tunnel, and what we need to do, we recognize that we have some maintenance work that needs to be done, but we'll be coordinating with the city on that project. We've got this project on the interstate from I-90 from Van Buren to Bonner, project taking place right now. Got a little project here that interesting. Most people probably wouldn't recognize that MDT would be involved with it, and that's this Speedway and Deer Creek Road project. Those are chip seal projects that we're doing out there, just some some maintenance type work for our keeping good roads good. And then this Old Montana 200 project is where the river was eroding into the bank. We had to do some stabilization. That project is still going on, but we're getting wrapped up. I think there's still some cleanup left out there. But other than that, that was a very challenging project on a narrow stretch of road that definitely added to the component where we were working on bridges on the interstate last year as well. So again, just this map just shows the variety where we're going all the way from an interstate down to a little local collector type road that we're working on. Some other projects in the area, we're working on Highway 93, adding a center turn lane going to the base of Evero Hill. Upcoming project is Pulp Mill Road. We've got some embankment that are sloughing and sliding that we're going to be doing some work on for stabilization of that. And then this project, the west, I see I've got my colors interchanged here. I missed that earlier. I'm sorry. This road on Mullin is the west of Missoula Northwest project that we're working towards. It's a project that'll be coming in the future, and this is the DeSmet interchange project. So sorry about that. And as you brought up, Melissa, you know, we are very interested in engaging with the public every chance we can have. So I've got some contact information here, our Missoula office. This is my cell phone number. And then Megan Redmond is our district public relations specialist. So she's a great point of contact, probably easier to get a hold of her than me. Sometimes it's my schedule's rather challenging, but just encourage anybody that wants to jot those numbers down or to reach out to us via our webpage. I encourage it.
Thanks, Bob. It's so neat to see the range of projects across Missoula County. I know we're going into construction season and summer, and while there's a little more traffic now, it's so nice when they are done. So thank you for all your work there. With that, I'll turn it back over to you now, Brett, to introduce the Q&A section.
Hi, can you at least hear me? I don't know if you can see me.
Yep, can hear you.
Okay, I turned my camera off and I can't get it back on, but I'll figure it out. But at any rate, thank you, everyone. Those are great presentations, and it's now time for questions and answers. Q&A, as we all know, is a very rich part of every city club discussion. And as I said at the beginning, we are committed to civil discourse. So we ask that you keep your questions civil and that you avoid making statements. And please use the Q&A Zoom function, not the chat at the bottom of your screen to type your questions. If you can, please include your name, and our board members will get your questions to our moderator, who will ask our panelists. And I will again turn it over to Melissa.
Thanks, Brett. The first question I have is aimed at Shane and maybe at Bob as well. Are there any plans to finish the bike and walking trail along Mullen Road between Flynn Lane and Reserve? Further, are there any plans to straighten out and fully pave Deschamps Lane from Mullen Road to the Y?
Bob, do you want me to take that one?
Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, so the shared use path question, the answer is yes. The trail from Flynn Lane to Reserve Street is a part of the overall build project. We asked for 23 million, received 13, so that was a component that we're going to take out. But the city has created impact fees that will cover the cost of those future infrastructure improvements. And with the grant agreement for the build project, we've also essentially kind of been put on the hook to build that segment of trail in the next 5 years. So so the answer in short is yes for the trail. And then the other question about connection of Deschamps from essentially the Y, it's actually Pulp Mill Road and Mullen Road. So from Pulp Mill Road down to Roller Coaster, the county has paved and kind of essentially reconstructed Deschamps, and it's in pretty good shape. But then you go from Roller Coaster Road south to Mullen Road, it's gravel. There are times when if if we have a wet enough spring, it becomes impassable. We do have plans to slowly reconstruct that segment of Dayshaw. I don't have a huge budget, and I don't have a really big construction crew, so it's going to have to be, pieces at a time. And then one of Bob's projects, and just figure I'd mention that, is the reconstruction of Mullen Road, essentially from right around Dayshaw Lane out to Pultnell Road. And part of that is the realignment and reconstruction of that intersection. So that'll happen in the next probably 4 to 5 years, maybe. And it'll, that intersection will have a better alignment. It'll tie into the highway with a 90-degree angle rather than at that wonky skew that it sits at now. So.
Thanks, Shane. Bob, do you have anything you want to add on those?
No, I think Shane did a pretty good job of covering where we are with the shared use paths. One thing that I will add regarding shared use paths in general is Missoula, the city of Missoula and Missoula County both are very proactive towards shared use paths, which is definitely helpful for MDT, knowing that we have willing partners from a maintenance standpoint. If we're able to make investments in those facilities, we know that there's a desire and to have those in the community, which I can't say is the case in all the communities that I work in. So it is great to have that partnership in place.
Thanks. So the next one, a question I have, Brian, I'll tee you up first. Are there any considerations regarding climate offsets in the work you're doing and/or climate mitigation due to the increased amount of air travel that Missoula is creating? Then Shane, Bob, as well, Brian gathers his thoughts. Think ahead here. How are you two considering climate mitigation and resiliency planning into these future projects and planning?
So for the airport, absolutely. So one of the things we're doing in this next phase of building is all in our jet bridges. We're putting air and electric on them. So say when an airplane lands and it goes to the gate, it may run its auxiliary power unit, which is then burning fossil fuels at the gate to keep the aircraft cool. So on our new jet bridges, we'll have air and electric, so we can cut back on anything that the aircraft itself is putting out for pollution. So we'll take in that. And then we're also trying to put in infrastructure so that our ground handlers can bring in electric ground service equipment rather than the diesel or gas that they currently have today. And then while we're doing our parking lot rehabilitation, we're putting conduit in the ground because we do know at some point that rental cars will be probably transitioning to electric fleets, and our customers in the parking lot will need charging stations. So absolutely, if there's a place in the ground that we can put conduit for future proofing the airport, we're doing it when we have the ground open and trying to do our part. So yes.
Thanks, Brian. Bob, do you want to attack that one next?
Yeah, sorry about that. Couldn't find the mute and the video button there. We do have a few programs that we utilize trying to recognize, climate, I guess, and that's through our CMAQ projects that we have where we're trying to reduce emissions. Part of it's the efficiency of automobiles, making sure that we're not having great delays at the intersections, trying to reduce that idle time. One of the things that we're looking for is always the efficiency of the roadway, keeping our level of service that we call it. Basically, recognizing that cars sitting and idling are contributing more to the emissions than if they were able to traveling without the delays and the long stops. Also, we are, as I mentioned, in Missoula, we recognize that there is a strong desire for shared use paths and multimodal travel. So we're working with the city and the county on projects of that nature. The challenge for us, as everybody is what the funding looks like. So there's some exciting concepts and projects that we are aware of, that the city and the county, that we're working together with the MPO on those. So recognizing it, it's a little bit of a challenge in Montana from the funding and just the nature of the travel that we do have, because you know, the Department of Transportation, we don't have great public service that connects the outlying communities to Missoula. Once you get to Missoula, it's a different situation, but the national highway system is helping people from Hamilton and Darby get into Missoula. Once they get to Missoula, there is some public transit, but you know, getting from me to get from where I am here in Kalispell today to Missoula tomorrow, I've really only got about one viable option to get there back and forth. So it's definitely a challenge for Montana, just with the limited population and tremendous distances we have to travel.
Thank you. Shane, do you have anything you'd like to add?
You know, I just say that the county is focused on you know, trying to limit the carbon footprint, and one thing that I really appreciate about the county is that, you know, the county commissioners are really focused on that. The other thing, and Bob mentioned the MPO, and if you look at specifically in the MPO area, so this urban area, there's a really heavy focus in the long range transportation plan that is geared towards trying to get folks out of their cars and onto bikes and on the sidewalks or in the buses. And they have a very lofty goal, probably a greater goal than any other MPO, I would imagine. And so, you know, there's certainly an interest and a shift that direction. Bob mentioned, you know, we're a rural state, so it becomes pretty challenging for somebody that lives in Sealy to get to Missoula without using anything other than a motorized vehicle. But I think we can build within those areas. I think we can build a better non-motorized transportation network, and I think we're trying to do that. And if you look at Missoula, for instance, you know, there's a connection to Hamilton. There's a connection out to Bonner. There's connections that are being developed right now. You know, Bob mentioned the reconstruction of Mullen Road. Part of that is it does have a shared use path if the county is willing to fund it. So it's being planned. So, you know, slowly but surely over time, I think you're going to see those non-motorized connections, especially out of Missoula, that'll provide those opportunities. So, yeah, I think there's interest in evolving that direction, and as Bob mentioned, funding is a big challenge. So.
Thank you. Brian, you're up next. Can you tell us more about security at the new airport and explain the baggage handling?
Absolutely. So obviously we'll have a new TSA checkpoint, so we're pushing our congressional delegation to, you know, we hate to build a brand new airport and all we do is move our current equipment into the new building. So trying to upgrade through the congressional appropriation, some new equipment. Cameras everywhere, so we don't want to have any, you know, parking lot entrance in case there's, you know, something slips and falls or whatever. We want to make sure that, you know, we're on top of it for security. And then you're probably actually alluding to the screen I showed, and that's the baggage handling system. So right now you would come in, go to the ticket counter, check your bag, and they would say, hey, take it over to EDS 1 or 2, and you have to lug your bag over there and give it to TSA. So the baggage handling system is where you check your bag, and then the agent takes the bag and puts it on a belt behind them, and then it'll go into a private room in the back. So everything will be behind a house, and just much more efficient. Probably cut down on the times that people have to handle the bag. It'll be fully automated, and then it'll go to the back and sorted by all the airlines. So be much, much more efficient and fast.
Nice. That's great, especially with those late night flights waiting for baggage. Shane, Bob, this next one's directed towards you two. As a big supporter of the South Avenue Bridge, we have folks who are interested in hearing more on the timeline for that facility.
Bob, do you want me to run on that one too?
Well, I think that one is yours for right now. Yep.
Okay. Gosh. So we're trying to finish up the environmental document. HDR is the consultant that's working for Missoula County, and Missoula County and HCR have submitted the environmental document. MDT and FHWA have been reviewing that. They've recently came back to the county with a few suggestions. One of those is dealing specifically with Section 106 and the historic nature of the structure. And so there's a component there that will probably be taken care of probably through the rest of the summer. And then at that point, if MBT and FHWA are comfortable with the environmental document, it's, I guess, going to be up to them to sign that document at that point. And from there, we've got an agreement in the works with MBT for the state to take over development and delivery of that project from that point. It hasn't been signed, but that's kind of the direction we're headed. Then as far as, the long-term schedule on that, what I'll tell you, and I don't want to step on your toes, Bob, but if you look at the off-system bridge program, many of the projects that are in that system are $500,000 to $2 million projects. And this project is a $15 million job. And it's a big ask for Missoula County to go and say, well, this is our number one bridge, and it should be your number one priority, MDT, but they've got an entire state of off-system bridge projects that they've also got to think about and deliver. So, I wouldn't imagine that it's probably in that 5-year window if we can get things taken care of on the environmental side. But my crystal ball is very gray when it comes to when that project might actually be constructed. I don't know, Bob, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, that was well said, Shane. The one thing that I will throw out there is that MDT recently, or not recently, but we've got a lot of bridges statewide, and we're currently really struggling with the new load rating system that's taking place. And also the challenges for us with bridges statewide is the change in industry as far as haul trucks and the number of axles they're putting under vehicles and how they're basically making a specialty haul vehicles. We're running into challenges with some of these bridges not being able to support legal loads by the simple pounds per square inch of tire, if you will, that's being applied to the roadway. So we've got a lot of bridges statewide that are critical to industry, especially the ag industry in eastern Montana, farm to market roads where there really isn't an alternate route other than across some of these bridges, and the farming and ranching communities. And actually we've got some of them on some of our major routes as well, not only just the smaller collector roads, but on some of our NH routes where we've got bridges that we've identified, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of needs. So that puts our bridge program, off-system bridge program, even more in a challenging position as far as what the funding looks like and when we're going to be able to get to bridges. So like Shane said, the crystal ball is very gray at this point, trying to figure out what this is going to look like going forward.
Thank you. Brian, you're up next. Considering the opportunity to educate and initiate new people who are traveling and or relocating to Missoula, is there any focus and or installations regarding Missoula as a historical Salish Aboriginal territory?
Well, I'll tell you, this person has great timing. So I would say we're kind of at that phase now where we're seeing where we have open space, where we don't. We are crammed in the first phase of this new terminal because we did squeeze in a temporary baggage claim. So when we do phase 2, we'll have much more room, but I would say yes, and please reach out to me directly and we'll kind of figure something out. But we are definitely interested. Just got to figure out when's the right time for something like that. And we'll work through our board as well, but I'm sure they're very interested in doing something like that as well.
Thank you. Bob and Shane, I'm coming towards the two of you now, since we're talking about Mullen Road here. So state route, but also in the county. I've heard one or the other of you talk a little bit about multimodal transportation, don't want cars idling, and also the heavier transport loads. With these and everything else in mind, why are roundabouts being used on Mullen Road as opposed to stoplights?
So I think that's probably a Mullen build question, Melissa. And so when we first started developing the Mullen build project, we've got a traffic engineering consultant on board, and we asked them to evaluate all these intersections and you know, what are the pros and cons of each intersection treatment type. And through that process, the recommendation was to select roundabouts for the intersection of George Elmer and Mullen Road and Mary Jane and Mullen Road. And a couple of reasons. One, there's a safety factor there. When you've got a signalized intersection, if there is a mistake made and somebody is traveling at 55 miles an hour or 45 miles an hour and impacts somebody at a 90-degree angle on the door side, those impacts are pretty significant and oftentimes lead to either a severe injury or a fatal crash. And so recognizing that, you can look at roundabouts and say, all right, if we look at capacity of a roundabout and the capacity of a signalized intersection, they're pretty similar. And when I say capacity, what I mean is how many cars can get through that intersection, let's say per hour or per day, whatever metric you want to use, they're very similar. So when you throw in the safety component, the roundabouts are a lot better because the roundabouts force people to slow down and think a little bit, where the signals don't offer that same safety capacity. I guess the last thing and final thing that I would say, and I'm not trying to be a salesperson for roundabouts, but the last benefit I think that we see with roundabouts are the off-peak hours of operation, where if you have a signalized intersection set up, and I'm sure you've all experienced it, you come to a signal that's red and it just turned red for you and you are sitting there for the next minute. And there's no traffic on the side street or the main line, but either way, you're sitting there unnecessarily, where that off-peak hour, that roundabout, you just drive through. So there's a lot of benefits to choosing a roundabout over signals, and it's not every case. It doesn't mean that the signal is the best solution for every intersection or a roundabout is the best solution for every intersection. Each situation really dictates what you choose, whether that's roundabout, signal, or just stop control.
Thank you. You didn't sound like a roundabout salesman at all. So the next question I have is geared at any or all of you. So what possible implications on local infrastructure funding from the federal government are you foreseeing, given that Montana will soon have a second U.S. representative? And Bob, I think it's your turn, so I will kick that one at you first.
So that's an interesting question. Right now Congress is going through the process of trying to figure out what the next highway funding bill is going to look like. And a lot of what takes place in DC is, where's your representative at? What committees are they on? That's where a lot of the business is done. So I think that if we can make sure that we in Montana can continue to have strong representation on some of these key committees, transportation, the different funding committees, to help make sure that Montana and the needs and interests of the Western large states with small populations in the Western U.S. is critical. I'm not sure that everyone's aware that the state of Montana gets far more from the federal government, the gas tax funding, than what we pay in. So last number I heard, Shane, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like $2.16 that Montana got for every dollar in taxes that we sent in. So we definitely need to make sure that those funding calculations stay the same or definitely don't go the other direction. There are some of the other larger, more populous states, California, for example, I think they get 95 cents for every dollar that they send to DC in federal gas tax that they get back in funding for their national highway system roadways. So I think that it's just key to Montana is that those funding calculations, the formulas don't change. And like I said, I think that just being able to have an additional voice in DC to help, share the concerns that not only Montana, but other states that are similar to us, we're the fourth largest state with, I don't know, the fourth smallest population or something. So it's definitely challenging for us. And what's really interesting for us is state of Montana's got 1 million residents, give or take, but we see 5 to 6 to 7 million visitors every year that are putting a burden on our infrastructure. So it's important that that's recognized and that we can continue to get funding so that the 1 million residents of Montana don't have to pay for the use and benefit of all the visitors that we have to our state.
I think that's really well said, Bob. Thank you. Brian, what's your perspective on the second congressperson?
All I can do is echo Bob. I mean, he nailed it. I mean, it's just another voice out there, another contact that we have. And it's really seeing what committees they're on. I mean, we've been lucky at whether you're red or blue, we've got one of each, and you always have each other's ears depending on who's the administration. So, having two on the other side, whether they're red or blue, it doesn't matter, but at least you have another contact to kind of reach out and kind of tell your story and kind of get in the line for funding. It's just very, very important. So that's my take.
Thank you. Shane, anything to add?
No, I think Brian and Bob covered everything I would have said.
All right. Well, in that case, don't mute yourself quite yet, because the next question I have for you is for each of you as well. And Shane, I'll ask you first. If you were to look out 5 to 10 years from now, what is one thing that you'd have liked to have seen through that would be part of your legacy?
Well, here, I guess, if I was going to look, have a vision for 5 to 10 years, specifically just for public works in Missoula County, what I would just say is they're really challenged funding wise, and this is no different than the state, for instance, at just a different scale than maybe what Bob deals with. But I think what I would really like to see is one, our equipment is in good shape, and we've got quality equipment for our crews. And right now, it's not always the case. Sometimes they're using equipment that is old and inefficient, and it takes them longer to do the job than it would normally if they didn't have that equipment. And I feel like public works is so broad. I feel like I'm really focused on road and bridge, but honestly, it seems to take the lion's share of the public comment and public involvement. So that's kind of where I probably will be focused. But the funding for equipment, but funding for our roads and bridges as well. And one of the things that we don't know at the county is how much money should we be spending on our facilities to keep them at a level that we expect, right? And that's another issue. Not all the public is in agreement at the condition and the level of service that we should be providing, right? So there are folks that if there's a pothole, they're unhappy. And there are other folks that if there's one pothole, they're fine. And they would much rather pay less taxes and just deal with one pothole or 10 potholes. So there's always this imbalance. But, ideally, what I'd really like to see is I'd love to have a pavement management system that projects out how much money should we be spending on our pavements. That same system that looks at and evaluates our gravel roads and our bridges. So that we can go to the public and say, all right, if this is the level of service you expect as a public, here's how much it's going to cost. And if you want to pay this amount, here's what you need to expect for the condition of your roads and your bridges. And we don't have that right now. We've started with just a pavement management system where we've just gotten basic data of our paved roads in the county. and there's recommended treatments and there's costs associated with that. It was never done in a way that became really a good tool to communicate to the public. And so, at the end of my time here, hopefully, there's a good system where we're communicating and the public is understanding our needs for equipment and infrastructure.
Thanks, Shane. I like that perspective of being informed and that back and forth of what do you expect? Here's what it takes. Brian, 5 to 10 years out, what's your legacy?
I wouldn't call it legacy. This is a community's airport, not our airport, but we just don't want people, when we build this new building, we don't want people to look at it and go, well, why'd you do that? Or people who take over for us, why'd you do this? That's really a silly thing, but we just wanted a building that's easily expandable, it can be done cheaply and smartly, and what this new building will give us is just a way to, bring in more airlines, which competition is what really, really drives down air service. So the more flexibility you have for the airlines, the more willing they're to come here. If you open up another hub, say Chicago year round, that really then brings connections to the world, and then all the other airlines have to match it, and it just, competition breeds success. So that's kind of what we really want here, is to kind of open up the world for our local, yes, we bring people in, but we also want to have, businesses here that you can have a great living and make it to your one stop to your conference and meet people face to face, and kind of go back to the way we were at some point.
Thanks, Brian. And Bob, 5 to 10 years out, what would you like to see done?
The first thing that comes to mind is just with all the challenges that we have, and all of us on the call here are talking about basically one thing that we all have in common is just some form of public transportation, and recognizing the need for teamwork and good partnership amongst different entities, whether it's MDT in the city, the county, the MPO. The airport expansion is going to lead into additional impacts onto old Highway 10 out there, the West Broadway run. So just everybody working together. So one of the things that I really would like to see is just that we can't all be in our own silos anymore. We need to be spending a lot of time coordinating with each other, making sure that we're able to maximize the dollars that are being spent, to make sure we're putting the dollars in the right place. And Shane did a great job of talking about the challenges, and that's the difference in desires of the public that we all work with. Some people, we build a new roundabout, some people love it and they're ecstatic about it, and other people are looking for somebody to take to task over the decision that a roundabout was put in there. So it's just those compounding effects, the issues of trying to make sure that we're truly coming up with the best solutions for all the problems in front of us. I think that going forward, or when I'm done with my career and continue to work with Shane, which is exciting but different for both of us, and working with the other partners in the community, it's just, I hope that when we're all done, that we can continue to have a community and a network of transportation that everybody's proud of, and we know that we've, there's no way we're going to have solved all the problems, but hopefully we can feel confident that we did the best we could expending the dollars available to us, and have it be, better than what it was before we got here.
Thanks, Bob. I agree with you that there's that sort of common thread of community and collaboration, and I think it bodes well for us as a community, having each of you at the heads of your respective organizations working towards that. I've got a final question for you today. So I think of the last one as being more kind of the long game. What do you see looking ahead? So if we want to flip that on its head, last question for you is the bright and shiny. So right now, if it's your one chance to kind of plug whatever it is in your industry that is really interesting, exciting, on the horizon, neat thing you're working on, innovation you see, but what is that top of mind cool thing that you are working on right now? Bob, I know I just picked on you, but I'm going to do it again and switch the order. What's new and exciting in your world?
Well, the new and exciting in my world, I think, is something that I touched on earlier, and that's just the fact that hopefully we have, every time I talk to anybody, I'm asked oftentimes what's the biggest challenge facing me. So the biggest challenge facing me is that funding. I moved over to Western Montana from the prairies, north central Montana, all these trees around here, and I can't find a money tree anywhere. But if I could figure out that funding, more dollars would help us make everybody's life a lot easier. But with what's going on in Congress right now, where they're talking about, the potential for some significant increases in infrastructure funding, that's exciting as heck for me.
If some of those increases make it onto your money tree, do you have any top of mind priorities in mind where you'd spend it first?
Top of mind money where I'd spend it first. Shane can speak to this probably more so than I, because he helped run the program for a lot of years, but we've already got, somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 million worth of unfunded but already identified projects. So it'd just be a matter of sorting through all those projects and figuring out, which one rises to the top first. There's definitely some big projects out there that are enticing. There's some work west of Whitefish. Again, I cover all of western Montana, so the chunk of Highway 93 between Polson and St. Ignatius comes to mind. Maybe some challenges on what we do with Highway 93 south of Missoula, and then working in conjunction more locally to the Missoula area. Maybe something can happen with the Brooks corridor and the exciting project that the MPO has going on there. Shane, maybe the build grant, you can apply for a second chunk of I can't remember the acronym for the new build grant. It was Tiger and then it was build. But maybe we can wrap up some projects like that. So I've got a pile of needs and identified projects out there though.
No shortage of them. Thanks, Bob. I think you are off the hot seat for today now. Brian, looking in your world, what is that bright, shiny, exciting thing?
Well, technology is moving fast. It's, whether there's going to be parking lot upgrades that we can do for technology, quick passes, airlines, even during the pandemic, the airlines have gotten so much more aggressive. If you're out in the Montana, Montana's been discovered because everybody wants to get outdoors. So there's been 2 brand new airlines that just got operating certificates that, that we can go out and recruit. What used to be a harder sell with our population expanding, it's going to be easier probably to do some air service recruitment, to get connections, more eastern bound connections rather than all the California that we got this year. And then, it just, that next phase of the terminal, doing phase 2, we didn't know if it was going to be a 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, the next expansion, which is, the baggage claim and rental cars, with some ARPA money, the American Rescue Act money that's still yet to be announced for us. That might make that project go a lot quicker than we originally had thought. So that's a great thing for us in the community. So.
Thank you. And looking at Eastbound Flights, if you had one at the top of your list with the magic wand, where would we be flying?
So I'd say our most requested is Chicago. Well, people love New York, but we just don't have enough bodies in there on a daily basis to kind of fill up a whole airplane. So probably Chicago. That way you have a one-stop, besides Minneapolis, another one-stop connection. So that would really open up competition in our market. Great.
Thanks, Brian. And Shane, last but not least, what is that exciting thing in your professional world?
Melissa, I think kind of covered it already. Mullen, the Mullen build, just continuing to try to deliver that. And, ARPA is the American Recovery Plan Act. As funding rolls in from that, how do we spend those limited dollars? And, it's probably, on my end, in the public works side, it's sewer water systems and storm drain systems, which just are not that exciting. And I'm not going to sell many city club tickets talking about sewer and water systems, but sadly, that's the excitement in my world, as far as, upcoming projects. And we'll continue to look for funding opportunities. Like I mentioned before, we've looked at FLAP, we've looked at TA. We're going to continue to look at opportunities to where we can leverage our local dollars and just get more money into the community.
Thanks, Shane. And yeah, to reiterate what Brett said at the very beginning, thank you, Bob, Brian, Shane, for your time and sharing your expertise with us today. Brett, would you like to close us out?
Sure. Thanks again, Melissa, Brian, Shane, and Bob. I think given the uncertainties and weirdness of the last year, the progress you and your organizations have made to make our lives easier and safer, it has been remarkable. And I for one, am grateful for all the work you've done. And also, again, thanks to our sponsors, especially the University of Montana, First Security Bank, and Blackfoot Communications. And most importantly, to our audience, thank you so much. We can't do this without you and your support and your curiosity and your interest. So again, thanks for joining us. Please join us via Zoom, hopefully for one of the last times, July 12th for our next forum, tentatively called Missoula's Changing Climate. Are we ready? What can we all do? And until then, I again, thank you all. Goodbye.